here in just a few seconds. Here on
ripped from a dirty wrestling, both his hands off, and then ended up while my dad was in there saying goodnight to him. The machine they had, I guess, circulating his blood and circulating. So I guess because he was getting bed sores because he wasn't moving at all, and they're taking like 70 pounds of water off of him a day.
Wow.
Me and Tyson Kidd are in there, and we hadn't gone in to see him for a few days. And I give my Uncle Ross a lot of credit because he never left the hospital. And same with Harry Smith. He stayed in there the whole time. And I went in, and we thought we were pretty tough. And we went in there, and my brother had put on 70 pounds of water weight, and he looked like a balloon, and his hands were black, like blood.
Wow.
And from the gangrene before they amputated. And I remember throwing up in my mouth. And I walked out of there with tears in my eyes, and I said, I'll never go back in there again. I couldn't. And me and TJ, both Tyson Kidd, both of us walked out, and that was the last time I saw my brother alive. And Shawn Michaels was one of the major donators. He donated his whole check from the show they did. They did a memorial show for my brother in Calgary, and Shawn Michaels and Undertaker, I know Brett, they all put in their whole check and donated I think it was like $20,000 each for the children's hospital so they could get some technology and understanding of this disease or virus or what's that staph infection or flesh-eating virus, how it works, and to try to get new beds for the kids that if anything ever happened to someone in the future, they'd be able to do more than what they did for my brother. And that was like the bad news, but the good news was that we got to wrestle in front of Vince McMahon and Shawn Michaels and Undertaker and Brett for a dark match. And they said, hey, you guys did such a good job in the dark match. We'll put you on the actual main show for one match. Just don't do too much crazy stuff because we're doing everybody's finishes. And we were little kids, we're just trying to have fun. And we wanted to show all the guys we'd done their moves and practice their moves. So we're doing the sharpshooter and doing the super kick. And Shawn's like, doing the pile driver. Undertaker's like, as long as you guys don't do any of our finish, he's like, yes, go out there. You got like 15 minutes. Go steal the show. And they let us go out there and steal the show. So that got Carl DeMarco, who was the president of WWE Canada at the time, WWF before, excited about maybe bringing me up. And then after that, the 2 years after that we did the Calgary Stampede show, and that was Brett and Brian Pillman and Davey Boy, and I think the Harts were all there. We're all ringside. And we were during the Calgary Stampede, which was huge because the whole country's there, and everyone from all over the world visiting. And they sold out the Saddle Dome for the In Your House, and things looked like it was the absolute dream job, and I was going to be in there with all my family. And then fast forward a year and a half later, and Montreal Screwjob happened, and Brett had that falling out, and justifiably so after watching everything that I watched. I used to kind of be wondering if it was worth it when Brett had punched Vince out, if it was the best decision. And then I watched the fact that Brett tried to stay, and he asked to stay, and then they fucked him anyway. And I didn't see that until the A&E special later on, because Wrestling with Shadows doesn't really fully describe what happened, and I didn't know the whole story. And then I watched it years later, and I swallowed my words, and I said I apologized to Brett publicly and privately, and just said I didn't know. I thought maybe that you could have done more to stop that from happening. And he said I did everything I could to stay, and I wanted to stay, and my heart was there. And I think Brett was the most loyal WWE guy ever, and that they broke his heart and they fucking crushed him. And then that stupid accident with his brother, and then I always say, I know it was an accident, but the fact they called it Over the Edge pissed me off. It just made me feel like there was more to it. And I'd heard a couple different things, that it was supposed to be set up where he fell to the ring and then he was suspended in the midair halfway above the ring apron. And so he was supposed to be that. And I don't know if that was a rib on Owen or something. I heard a few different weird stories over the years of you never know what really happened. And I'm not there doing unsolved mysteries or anything like that. I'm going to go with the fact that I can't change the past, and the fact that the family's all working together now again, and that Brett's back in there as a legend and doing stuff with WWE or WWF WWE now, and the guys like The Rock are in there, and that Paul Levesque, Triple H, and Brett shook hands after all these years at the Calgary show, and that Brett got to come out there, and Natalya got to go over, which is a big thing in Calgary because a lot of times they job her out. And I think she's probably top 3 best females ever, and I don't think they did a lot with her for years, and I think that's all politics behind the scenes, because somebody's writing, as Brian Pillman said years ago, it's the pencil, and whoever's writing the script and storyline in the back, And I think they did a shitty job of taking care of her, but they did what they did. And then after all these years, they finally maybe gave, I know they gave her a new contract, and she was very happy with the numbers. From what I got told, that you can't get exact numbers out of anybody because it's against the contract rule to discuss what you get paid. But I mean, you get an understanding she was, I think, felt like she was rewarded after all the years of hard work, and that she was going to be given another run. And Tyson Kidd's the guy that does all the girls matches, and he's
Yep.
probably one of the best in ring coaches in the world. One of my guys, and he just watched more wrestling than anybody, and technically probably one of the most underrated, but probably one of the most technical guys with the best memory out of anybody they ever had in their company. And I know Vince, after the neck injury, had said that he wished he did a lot more with Tyson Kidd, but that Tyson Kidd, he never said a word, and he shut his mouth, and he did everything he could to keep the relationship going. So
Yep.
Natalia wasn't wrestling on a with burnt soil or a burnt bridge, and just was a real professional and the toughest guy in the world. I've never seen a guy break his neck and come back and work for the same company and never say a negative word about them in the public eye and get the best matches. The girls division, because of him, has never been the same, and the matches are just. I
Yep.
find watching sometimes the girls are better than the guys, and that's a testament to him setting up the matches and choreographing. I think wrestling's obviously a well drawn out play, and anyone that knows what it is, the more time you spend before the match going over things, it's like a guy with acting. If you just want to wing it, that's fine. But if you get the lines and you do it right, there's a reason there's directors, and there's a reason there's people that are great actors, and those guys have to go home and read the script for days and days and weeks and months, because
Yes.
that's part of their. And that's the same thing with choreographing a match, and I think that's why the female division is so good now, and that women's wrestling has a totally different, I guess, image.
It's got a
For me,
totally different identity than it used to.
it really, and again, I give Tyson Kidd full credit, because the guy's a workhorse and he's a genius, and he wrestles with all those girls before the matches and make sure they get everything done right a certain way. And that was the way Brett taught him, and that was the way Owen taught him, and that was the way that my grandfather taught us. There's a certain style, and it's all about work ethic and consistency of behavior. And the guy's never missed a show. He was always on time, and never complained about anything, and ended up being probably the best agent WWE's ever had. And he does both shows now. He does Raw and SmackDown. He does all the girls matches, and I think he's resurrected the female division and given it some really good credibility behind the scenes, because he puts his heart and soul into it.
We've got Teddy Hart with us today. Of course, Teddy is a legend in professional wrestling. One of the I guess I came across, you kind of came into my world when I used to watch you in AAA. You and Jack Evans and Joe Leader and all those guys. Holy smokes.
I'm so cool that I'm so happy you got to see that stuff, because that was some of my best stuff. And I thank Conan very much for bringing me down to Mexico, and Johnny Ace for making that happen. He knew I was getting released, and the second time I was in WWE, there's always stories of Teddy Hart blew opportunities. It's like the opportunity I had when I was 18. That's after Brett and Vince had the falling out, and I was there all by myself. And Owen was going through some trouble with his marriage and gimmicks he was doing on TV. I mean, gimmick, which is like character stuff. Obviously, Owen never did any drugs or anything like that. So sometimes people mistake the word gimmick for gimmick. But I mean, his character and the stuff they were doing with Jeff Jarrett and some of the storylines he wasn't happy with, because I know his wife was vocal, and it made it hard on him. And he said I might be the Blue Blazer. And so that was an idea that came up, and then that obviously fell through the cracks, and then I was released due to being immature. But I don't think there was much of a chance for me to do much with Owen dying, and then the lawsuit, and then all the bad blood. So fast forward 10 years later, I think I got another chance when I was 27. I did Wrestling Society X.
Yes, I remember watching that on MTV.
We were supposed to get Eminem and 50 Cent and Dr. Dre and Lloyd Banks and Obi Trice and that group of guys. And then one of the guys I was working with that was a huge fundraiser for me. We used to move marijuana a lot, and I used to grow it in California, so I didn't have to worry about the airplanes too much. But I helped a couple guys get jobs flying seafood. That's what it was supposed to be, from Vancouver to Calgary, for a couple restaurants that wanted fresh sushi. So, and I guess they decided to take that operation and turn it into I guess, a transport operation for getting marijuana from Canada to the United States before everybody had dispensaries everywhere. And this is when marijuana was still really expensive in Canada, and the U.S.
Yes.
dollar was so. It was a multi-million-dollar business, which helped me fund the Matt Rat show, which Eric Bischoff pretends he doesn't remember coming up for. But I mean, I got a video of him coming up and working with me, and he was going to beat Vince, and we all kind of laughed. And I'm a Vince McMahon guy to the day I die. I love Vince McMahon, and I think he saved the wrestling business, and that people don't give him enough credit. And everybody always has shitty stuff to say. It's like same thing with Donald Trump. You know, it's easy to knock guys, but try doing what they did. Try walking in their shoes, and I don't think too many guys could ever walk in Vince McMahon's shoes. And personally, to me, Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon have always been really nice to me. Stephanie McMahon got me out of a federal prison on sexual assault charges the first time my wife tried to pull this shit. She ended up getting me a limousine and a Wendy's triple cheeseburger and fries and a Frosty as my one request.
That's
and they had
awesome.
Dan Spivey come up and pick me up and take me to rehab program in the United States, which allowed me to get out of jail, go to rehab. Even though I didn't have to go there, they did a favor and they talked to the judge. I don't know how they did it or how much pull they have behind the scenes, but WWE is very powerful, and the people in there, they have friends everywhere. And so I guess a federal judge decided that it was better for me, instead of sitting waiting for these charges to become an actual trial, because I would have to go to trial. My wife ended up, ex-wife, recanted. This is the first time she did it as a stunt. She thought it'd be almost funny. I guess she charged me with sexual assault, and then wanted to hold me hostage at her house while she charged me. And I said, I can't, you charge me. Once they see me, they're going to arrest me. So one of my friends is a Freemason, and I'll go back to the story. Like I say, I'm jumping around, but it's so
go ahead,
they ended
brother.
up getting me. They were going to bring me in. I was going to join the Blue Lodge. I was all excited about becoming a Freemason and trying to work to be a Shriner. My grandfather was a Shriner, and my dad's dad was a 32nd degree bestowed York Rite Freemason, and so it was a big deal for me. And then that got cut out, and I'm sitting there with my wife laughing, and that she called the cops about sexual assault. I said, well, you need to recant. And she said, I'm not going to recant right now. And so by the time the whole thing happened, they ended up picking me up. And I was walking down the street. They grabbed me and said, you got a sexual assault charge. We got to take you to jail. And so I couldn't get out. So I'm sitting in jail. It's like 2 months goes by, and I'm sitting there waiting for her to figure out if she wants to tell the truth, because she's afraid she's going to get charged for falsifying evidence and filing a false police report. So I've been sitting there, and I'm like, I don't know what to do. All of a sudden, Dan Spivey, my dad says, we worked something out. You're going to get out of jail, and you're going to go to rehab, and Razor Ramon's down there waiting for you. He's just had a heart attack, and he's going to be in the same rehab as you. You should probably go talk to him. I know he's one of your favorite wrestlers in the world. And so I had always been a huge fan of Scott Hall, and I was a good friend of Kevin Nash's, and I'd brought him in a few times for shows over the years. And so Dan Spivey came up, and he picked me up, and he's like, you're going to rehab in Houston, and do you want anything to eat? And I'm like, I said, yeah, the jail food sucked. I said, I don't even know what I'm in for. He's like, I heard the story. He's like, it sounds ridiculous. He's like, you got to write a book someday about this shit. You couldn't write this. He's like, but we're letting you out. So they actually transported me while I had these charges from Canada to the United States with like an armored security and like a bodyguard type of thing to the airports. And he's like, don't disappear on me. He's like, I'm getting paid good money to pick you up and take you from A to B. He's like, can I trust you? I'm like, yeah. He's like, so he gives me $50, and I got to go run around the airport for a few hours, knowing that I was going to go back to a locked-in rehab facility for who knows how long. And I stayed there for a couple months. My ex-wife came to visit me, and so I actually got out of the rehab. I spent 2 months with Scott Hall there, and it was some of the best times of my life. And I was getting to work out in there, and I actually got WWE to give me a testosterone replacement prescription. I was, I think, the youngest guy ever to get one. I think I was like 33, and so I did it legally, and I've always been an advocate of steroids being done right. And I think people have changed their view on testosterone replacement a lot, just like marijuana over the last 10 years. People have started to get smart about it, and a lot of older people are using it now to help rehab themselves. And obviously under the right guidance and use, it's a definitely helpful thing, just like marijuana. Anything in moderation, I think, on that level, if it's medical and you have the right people watching you and advising you on it, it could be used to help you heal. And same thing with the steroids, could be used to help you get to a point where obviously we're deteriorating as we get older, and it's something to help give back to the body. So I was happy to do that and get the prescription. And then I left the rehab program, and I crossed back over through Toronto. And I guess Toronto didn't have my name in the database because it was a provincial warrant so that I had. So they let me back into the country. I went back to my wife's house. I set up a video camera, and she was, I guess, happy to see me. So she wanted to have sex. So I let the camera roll, and then I sent it to my dad. My dad, the first time he ever drove all the way up to Edmonton to see me, he gave her the video and said, "This is you having sex with your husband. How could you charge him for sexual assault?" And she's like, "Oh well, it's my wife."
Oh my God.
You don't recant now. We're gonna take it to the judge, and we'll have you arrested. So my wife had to write a statement saying that she had falsified evidence, and they let it slide, and they let me back out on the street, and I got to go back and live with her for another 5 years. And then she did the same thing again. She did it with her girlfriend. She charged me for sexual assault again on a business relationship we had in California that they wanted their money from a grow op. I grow a ton of marijuana and have all this video footage that the guy stole from Peacock. This is getting back to the NBC Peacock thing. And then,
Wow.
so during that time, I was wrestling in Mexico for Conan. So Conan came up to my house a few times and he saw the amount of marijuana that I had and the amount of marijuana that I grew in California because he lived in San Diego and I lived in Modesto. So I used to bring a ton of weed and butter, and like before shatter was a big deal, and like before vape pens were, I was the first guy to have a lot of this stuff because I had these guys that were huge investors that owned a bunch of vineyards that were growing marijuana with a co-op. So they had like 7 or 8 grow ops at the same time, all government permitted, all
Wow.
legally done, perfectly, plant count to 99 plants is the maximum you could have in California per house. So we had like 6 houses on the block, and we're making a ton of money with the medical marijuana. That's how I survived for so many years. And so, and then we had to deal with the airplane pilots. They got caught with conspiracy under the Patriot Act when we went to do the Wrestling Society X show as terrorists for flying marijuana, and they claimed that other drugs were involved on these airplanes. And I remember I told Rene Dupree on his podcast, I was walking through the airport with a guy named Graham Owen and another guy named Dan DeCan, and they were supposed to come down to watch the Wrestling Society X filming because we were the investors that were going to pay to get the major musicians they couldn't afford to get to come walk me to the ring. So I'd have these guys come in because there's a wrestling show about music. So it was a music wrestling show. So we thought, well, this would be amazing. I'm a huge Eminem guy. I think he's a god of music, big 50 Cent fan, huge Dr. Dre guy. So it was my dream. And we had the money. So we were going to hire these guys to come out to the ring. And then the whole thing fell through. And the world turns to glass when you get caught with airplanes and under the Patriot Act and terrorist and conspiracy charges. And so thank God I wasn't held responsible because I never made any money on the deal. I did everything in California legally, and these guys were obviously working in Calgary, but I had known them, and they were the investors for the Matt Rats program. So after Matt Rats had failed, Eric Bischoff and Jason Hervey ended up getting into the Wrestling Society X behind the scenes. So my guy Graham was still working with them, and Vampiro was a good friend of mine. So we went down to Mexico a few times and visited Vampiro and actually helped him out with one of his shows. He was short some money. So we lent him like $5,000 to finish his payroll on one of his shows. He did an indie show, and he always remembered that Vampiro, and he took care of me in Wrestling Society X when those guys went to jail. It was during the exact same day we were shooting. They went to jail that morning, and then I ended up having to go do the wrestling show for the next 6 days because we filmed everything at the same time. So sometimes we were wrestling 2 or 3 times in a day, having to do all those stunts off the cage and the scaffold and everything like that. So Conan knew of me from that. And then when I went to WWE after, they had said that we want to sign you. Wrestling Society X has flopped and that we want to bring you in. But I think they knew behind the scenes that I had taken a huge hit because my major investor went to jail, and he was the one putting up all the money for me and for my gear and for the wrestling school in Calgary and for the Matt Rat show and then for Wrestling Society X. Obviously, it was a flop. And so instead of getting a major contract, I remember Johnny Ace said, the most we can offer you is $500 a week. And I was like, wow, dude, that's not even enough to survive. I make $50,000 to $100,000 a month with all my stuff and grow ops and with the escort agency I run and my Persian cat business and stuff. And it wasn't worth even really taking the contract, but it was my own one hope in hell that maybe after all these years that I would get to be on TV. And I remember thinking there's no way with Brett and Sean and Triple H at that time still being at odds with each other that I was going to get a job on TV. They might just have me there and I'm running through the bullshit setting up the rings, and they got us in a meat locker. I kept telling everybody NXT is the only way something like NXT has to happen, because if you guys don't have a WHL or a CHL for the Canadian Hockey League, or you guys have a CFL for the NFL and you have the college leagues, which brings all your athletes up, every other major sports league has the best feeder systems, and they take care of their younger guys coming up. They're like diamonds in the rough. Imagine LeBron James if he never had a high school to go to or never had a university to go to, or Magic Johnson, they were just playing street ball and you had to pick them up off the basketball courts because there was no college league or there was no NFL feeder system, so there's no college football it would be a nightmare. So I said to these guys over and over, I'm running a show which is training kids. Training kids is like training a doctor at 10 years old to be a doctor. By the time he's 20, he's going to be a lot better doctor than a doctor that just decided to get into medical school at 22, whatever. But my whole justification or understanding or methodology on it was training people at a young age to do things they want to do. So the younger you get them in the ring, the better they're going to be when they're older. So I kept expressing to them that you guys should do something to get your guys ready for the WWE. And then NXT happened right after I got released. So they ended up releasing me right after Brett wrote his book. And I remember getting a call from Johnny Ace in the morning, and he said, I don't think we're going to be using the Harts. And I said, well, can I ask you what I did wrong? He said, it wasn't so much anything you did. He goes, but Brett has decided to not change any of the stories in his book. We've asked him to, and he's said absolutely not. It's his story. And I understand Brett and fully justified. That's his life and that's his story, and he wants to tell it, and he felt that that was the time and place that he was going to do it. I don't think he was thinking about that was when we were about to go on TV, and I don't think it would have mattered anyway, honestly. They would have found another excuse to fucking fuck me out of that job. And they ended up putting TJ and Harry as a tag team, and me and Jack Evans were supposed to be a tag team in WWE. So we were supposed to be the Hart Foundation, Jack Evans and I, and Harry Smith and TJ were supposed to be the Bulldogs. So there was, and then there was supposed to be the Hart Foundation. You connected with Jericho and Edge and Christian and a bunch of these. These are things that were thrown around with Court Bauer being in there as one of the agents at that time, who was my boss later on for MLW. Yep. So this was all connected, and he said we can make a lot of money with the Hart Foundation, and I guess Bruce Pritchard and Triple H, whoever the guys that were in behind the scenes, kiboshed the whole thing, and they ended up doing Evolution with Randy Orton. It was supposed to be, I guess, us against Randy Orton, Cody Rhodes, Ted DiBiase Jr., and all those guys. It was supposed to be a big, 10-on-10 type of thing, or 8-on-10, but it never obviously panned out. And I think Brett justifiably buried a lot of those guys in his book because that's the way he felt. I don't think Flair took care of him, and I know Hogan was hard to work with him, and I know those guys fucked him, and everyone kind of knows the story after. But during that time, it was still not really a good thing to be part of the Hart family, and I got punished for having the last name Hart, and everyone acts like I did something wrong, and it's like I never had a chance. Really, I was 18 when I first got signed. And any other opportunity I had after that. The worst thing I did is a few backflips in Ring of Honor, and without, I guess, permission, even though Rob Feinstein built the cage for me with platforms on top of it. So what do you think we're supposed to do off the top of the cage? Those moves. Just because we did extra moves and the fans were cheering, that's the worst thing I ever did. I never did anything else. And then I got into a fight with CM Punk, who turned out to be a multimillionaire, because if maybe me and him hadn't had the fight, he would have stayed in TNA and he would have been abused and not used properly. He's one of the most talented, smart guys in the world. Yep. And ended up becoming a major superstar from that fight happening. And everyone always asks what happened. It's like, what happened was CM Punk was a fucking genius, and he was smart, and we got into a fight, and I shut my mouth about things that are private. Who cares? We had a fight, and nobody really wins in a fight at all. Everyone loses. And so turns out, everybody wants to try to shit disturb, and I got blamed for being vocal about the I guess what happened in the fight. And so I told the story for a few years, and I got sick of being that guy with that story, because that was all people really wanted to talk about. And I said there's so many other things to talk about. Plus, when I was in Mexico and I told this story, CM Punk was the only guy to open the door for me out of everybody.
It's amazing.
I've known those guys for years. He was the only guy to come back, and he said, hey, because I couldn't get in the building. It was like we were at the hotel, and I couldn't get in, even though I worked for AAA. This is when I was with AAA after. And CM Punk came in, he's like, hey, that's Teddy Hart, let him in. And he walked me through all of the security, because there's a ton of security down there for those out. When they're doing shows in another country, it's like really hard to get. So, and he walked me in all the doors, and I'm walking through, and then I ended up seeing Batista. And I met Batista in Calgary years before that, and he was super nice to me. He ended up buying me breakfast, and we talked for a couple hours, and it was like, but CM Punk changed the path of my life, because that was one of the only things. I remember I was so depressed, and I was so bummed out with life at the time, and I was in Mexico not making a lot of money, and I was wondering if this was worth it being a wrestler anymore. I'd given up a lot of the stuff I'd had in Calgary, mansions and nice cars, to make basically $500 a show in Mexico is about the most you could make, because the guys down there are working for $30, $50, and there's a lot of talented kids down there, so it's hard to negotiate a huge rate. And Conan is a great businessman, but he's it's cheap as you can get when it's spending someone else's money, especially Dorian and those guys. They don't, it's hard to negotiate a big deal. So $500 a show and you're doing 4 shows a week still is 8 to 10 grand a month. It's pretty good money down there.
Yes.
To be living down there in Mexico. So I wasn't complaining at all, but I was just in my mind really kind of at a crossroads. And CM Punk opened the door and he let me in. So I actually collect tracksuits and I make clothes for a lot of the guys. And I have like the nicest tracksuit collection probably at that time in the world. I would think like I had over 400 different suits that I'd made, and my tracksuits start at like $1,000. I go all the way up to like 5 or 10 grand.
Wow.
Like I've made my tracksuits are nicer than Ric Flair's robes. I would think over the years. So I gave CM Punk a tracksuit. I actually snuck in. I got a key to one of his rooms. I found out what room he was in, and I dropped the tracksuit off on his bed, and I left it there. And the next morning, they said, "Hey, CM Punk was wearing a tracksuit on the bus." Because they have the little bus they all go on, right, to go to the next show. And he was wearing the tracksuit on the bus. And I thought that was so cool that he basically buried it. Because he doesn't talk a lot about that type of shit. He doesn't need to. He did his talking in the ring, and he did his talking with how much money he made in the bank. And I give guys credit for that. I've never been a guy crying about other people's success. I've always been happy to see that wrestling itself is growing and it's doing good. And the guys that were with me over the years are all multimillionaires and successful, because I've lived a pretty wonderful life over the years being a marijuana guy and having smart parents and having a business that I could concentrate on with my dad. We always had the gym and, a lot of investors and stuff in my time over the years that had been very generous with me. And I made a lot of money, and I had the money from WWE when I was 18, that big contract. So I got a $100,000 signing bonus or something like that. And I invested that money in California. So I lived a pretty good life for years. I drove a lot of nice cars. Randy Orton said to me one time, we were at WrestleMania in the same city, and he had a private gym. We just happened to pick the same gym that he was training in. And he was up in the gym training, and he said to me, he goes, I said, "I don't think I'll ever get in WWE." And he says, "You never know." He goes, "But one thing I'll tell you," he goes, "everyone knows your name and everyone knows your talent. And I have a brand new Bentley, and I don't get to drive my car very much." He goes, "I barely get to see my wife." He goes, "So the fact that you get to spend time at home and enjoy your animals and enjoy your house and enjoy your car," he's like, "look at that as a blessing, because as much fun as we have, we're on the road all the time." And he goes, "It's a sacrifice, and it may be something that you realize down the road that you might have had. As much as you think you've lost, you've also still done a great job of being relevant, and you have a job in Mexico, and that you're still doing good, and that don't give up." And he was really, really nice to us, Randy. Took pictures with everybody, but he was world champ at the time, so he had the whole gym rented out just for him.
Wow.
We just happened to go there, and he let us stay in the gym and train after we were the only ones. And he was busy with his wife. I think that's when he started bringing his wife with him on the road. And he said that was the first time Undertaker had talked him into getting one of the trailers so he could take the trailer to one of the shows. So they had their own bus. And I remember Randy Orton had his own like monster truck in the back with his name on it. And that was
awesome.
That was what he traveled doing. So I thought that was really cool.
So what is nowadays look like for Teddy Hart? What are the plans that you have? Have there been any talks between you and like AEW or MLW or any of these? What's 2025 or whatever look like for Teddy Hart?
Can you for some reason the microphone sounds really weird right now. I don't know if it's coming across on your side, but it's really
I will back off. The mic.
Yeah, that's not your fault. I think it's something with the connection, because it went from being really clear to now it's really staticky. I don't want to.
No. I have enjoyed listening to your stories, by the way. So what does the future look like for Teddy Hart?
I'm really hoping that maybe Bret Hart gets a wrestling school in Canada, and maybe they do something like an NXT in Canada, or maybe an AEW, WWE feeder system where they have this school in Canada. That Bret's probably the smartest wrestling mind in the world and the best psychology, definitely, and probably the most talented matchmaker in the history of wrestling and storyteller. So I've heard that Bret has expressed an interest in maybe doing a school here in Calgary, and I have a few investors and friends they're huge Bret Hart guys, and he's Prime Minister of Canada to me. If Donald Trump won for president, Bret Hart could win Prime Minister of Canada. I know he probably won't ever do it, but I think he's the most popular athlete, most well-recognized and respected athlete to ever come out of Canada besides Wayne Gretzky. And I think worldwide, Brett's even more recognized than Wayne Gretzky ever was. And it's just a matter of if he's given the right, I think the right assistance from AEW, if that's where he's going to work with, or with WWE, or both. I think he's one of the few guys that could probably send guys to both companies, and anyone that came out of Bret Hart's school would be sought after and hugely respected and very valuable. As again, my thing is about creating a farm system. There's a kid named Kid Chocolate, Mo Jabari, who's basically Brett's student, and he's just phenomenal and a really smart guy. And he's been here in Calgary running Dungeon Wrestling with my cousin Dallas, and they're selling out the pavilion every couple months, and they're looking to start expanding and maybe do a bit more, maybe working on a TV show up here and setting up a training center. There's a guy named Derek Starlight who works with the Muppets. He's the very first Native American puppeteer. I think he might end up with Sesame Street being the very first Native American character on Sesame Street. But he works with Fraggle Rock right now, and he's an impersonator, and he does Kermit the Frog and Miss Piggy. But he's the very first Native American guy to ever finish Jim Henson's puppet school in LA and graduated with honors from there. And so he's doing live shows all over North America. But there's a really nice casino in Calgary here called the Grey Eagle, and one of the guys that's at the Grey Eagle, he's thinking about doing basically monthly shows at the Grey Eagle with Dungeon Wrestling, which is Brett's company. And there's the possibility of kind of creating two companies. One would be Next Generation Stampede Wrestling, and the other one is called Dungeon Wrestling, which is Mo's company with Dallas and with Steve, Jade's husband, which Jade's my cousin. And Steve Lambros, a really nice guy, very smart business guy, banker, and they've done a wonderful job bringing back wrestling to Calgary. And so that's kind of where I'm just watching and looking, and hopefully I've been out of action for a long time, for like 3 years. I started wrestling again 3 months ago. I've had, I think, 10 matches, and the ring rust is starting to come off. I'm getting back to the gym more. I suffered a really weird injury. Like Davey Boy, have you ever heard he broke his back with a trapdoor in WCW?
Yeah.
So one of the rings has got a broken board, and the beam snapped up and hit me in the spine about 2 months ago, and I thought I cracked my spine.
Oh, no.
Over all the years of my career, I've never been in so much pain, and I'm working a 9 to 5 setting up gym equipment. So they pay me a lot of money to do this. It's a cash job. So you don't want to miss out on that type of opportunity. And I want to show people like Tyson Kidd and Natalia and my Aunt Ellie and all these people that have backed me up for years while I was going through all the shit with the jail and the headaches and the drug charges in the States. And again, a lot of rumors and shit and never accurate information being put out there by people like Hannibal or different guys that would just take cheap shots at me. And I'm not a big computer guy. As I said, I don't do podcasts really, or try not to, because I just don't feel like there was the right people representing my story, or they would interrupt, or they wouldn't be listening. And I go all over the place sometimes because it's a complicated story, or this is how it happened. So, and if you listen carefully and you are a good, and you pay attention to movies and you watch and you actually care about what I say, you'll go back. And I never lie about anything. I've been very honest about everything. So I have a hard time when you try to pin a girl's missing whereabouts on me, or maybe a murder story, all of a sudden this, and you try to kill my reputation as a guy that has been helping. I've had matches with almost every guy on TV.
Yeah, you've wrestled MJF. You've wrestled all the names.
There's like 40 guys on TV, or that were on TV, or are on TV now, or in NXT, or in AEW that I've had matches with, and I don't think you could find one bad match I've ever had, or one complaint about those guys. Any of them, if they were ever allowed to say anything about Teddy Hart, because they made it almost like a bad thing if you talk about Teddy Hart or you mention my name. Like poor Brian Pillman had to go on TV publicly and say that he was no longer associated with me because he was afraid somehow that being associated with me was going to hurt his reputation, as he decides not to use his dad's name and takes a gimmick on. And look, whatever those guys get, they'll take, because they're so desperate to get a job, and the money is so shitty on the indies compared to the money you get in WWE that they have to take whatever they decide to write as a script. And again, I think up until literally a couple months ago, that if you're one of the guys from the Hart family at all connected to any of it, you're getting fucking the shit into the stick. You could write a great storyline, or you could write a shitty one. If you get a shitty one, you're losing majority of the matches, and you're a loser. And even if it's fake or not, if you lose a lot of matches, that's just the way it is. And you're definitely not going to get the same push as a guy that's getting jobbed out all the time as a guy that's not. And if you get a good storyline, or the guys like you in the back, then it might change. For me, It's just one of those things where there's a time and place for me. I would like to go back to gymnastics. I would like to learn a double shooting star. I did it before. Shane McMahon and I sat in an airport one time. Another weird story, but I was in an airport with Shane McMahon. They shut down half the airport, and somehow I got through customs, and through this, not customs, but through TSA. And Shane and his wife were sitting there, and he's like, I said, why didn't you take the private jet? He's like, I couldn't get. There was some problem with it, so I ended up flying here to get a flight from here to Canada for something he was doing. So we were on the same flight, and we talked, and he did the double shooting star, and me and him had been friends for years. I told him about the Matt Rat show. I was going to do it and training kids, and he knew I was. I said, I think I'm. Besides, Shane's done the only other guy in the world that I know that's jumped off as many cages as me or done as many things that he doesn't have to really do it. We did it more just because we have big balls and we just like the challenge of it. But I never made my money trying to kill myself in wrestling. I did that because I believed in God and I believed that fans would keep me safe and that I just wanted to challenge myself because self-recognition and awareness is something I've been pretty blessed to have. And I never thought I was going to have a job on TV until maybe I thought maybe at 40 with MLW I was going to get a chance. And then Bruce Pritchard, whenever he gets involved with my career for some reason, always seems to have I don't know if it's like he's like a big brother maybe or like a dad sometimes. Maybe he thinks that he probably does know sometimes some of the advice he gave me, and like I thought he could help me out in MLW and that he was gonna get behind some of the stuff we were doing, and then he ended up going back to WWE. So but while we were there, we had the Hart Foundation cooking pretty good, and we had the belts, and it looked like we were starting to get some traction, and then they kept getting calls from this girl's mom or her aunt or some lawyer trying to say that I had something to do with this girl's disappearance, and they were scaring everybody, calling the mayor of Florida and like strip clubs I wasn't allowed to go to, and like it was unbelievable. Their little campaign or crusade to try to blame me for something that the cops had easily found out where I was and what I was doing. I had nothing to ever do with it, and to make anything but cut it off and never talk about it again, to make it into this whole fucking shit show and ended up in a documentary on TV, complete defamation of character and slander and all bullshit based on complete lies. And then the people you had on there was an ex-girlfriend who'd come back to me. And Machiko was with me 2 years after that. And then I supposedly beat her up. It's like, why didn't you file charges for the 5 years I was with you? Why isn't there a video footage of these girls that were supposedly sexually assaulted? Well, the one was an escort, the other was a porn star, and after years of steroids, I'm like a fixed cat. I barely ever had sex. That's why they care that they work, did porn and stuff. Because I mean, being straight up. So to get charged with any of it, let alone to have my name ran through the mud right when I thought I was getting a push with MLW, it was like I had just finally broken through, and they started to trust me. And we had me and Harry together, and Brian Pillman was in there.
Those promos were amazing that you guys
Brian
would cut.
Pillman's he's a great kid, but he's no Jack Evans, and I wanted Jack Evans to come into MLW, but he was in AAA, and they signed Jack to AEW, and Young Bucks are like my best friends. They're really good guys, and they were pretty clear to me that, do you think you're in the shape you want to be in to go on TV? It's one thing wrestling for MLW, on probation in 2 states with an ankle monitor and pissing in a cup for them every week and not able to smoke weed. And I didn't want to be on TV, that type of TV, but MLW wasn't mainstream TV. I wanted a chance to go home, train. I hadn't been home in 6 years. I hadn't been home in 8 years. This is the first time I've been back in 8 years. I haven't been able to go to gymnastics. When I trained to do every move in the world. I learned the 630 when I was 18. I learned the double backflip when I was 19, 20, all these things. So after all the years of wrestling, I wanted to go back and relearn how to be a gymnast, go back, start doing yoga and stretching, and then come back as a different character. Teddy Hart, completely revamped, a year off, let my back heal, let my body rest. And I never got a chance to do that. And then by the time AEW wanted to talk to me, my lawyer is the same lawyer for Tony Khan. My name was dirt. And it was shit. If you talked about me, it wasn't good. So again, that's all the mystique. That's the smoke and mirrors and bullshit lies and stories where guys will just tell a Teddy Hart story. And I'm like, that's so far off what actually happened. But it's just kind of like, oh, well, it's easy to throw me under the bus, or it's politically correct to say something instead of saying something good, or guys are just scared. They interviewed 60 guys for the Peacock. 4 people said something bad. There was another 56 or 54 that all said good things about me. Not one of those interviews was used. And the other 10 guys that I had put on paper for them that they were supposed to actually talk about, Teddy Hart, good stuff, could have been Kevin Nash, could have been The Godfather, could have been Brian Cage, could have been MJF, it could have been so many people. not one of those people was pursued after that. And then when they talked to me, I got a word from Tyson Kidd about 3 months before it aired that it's a complete shit show and they're basically cutting your legs off. And this will be the worst thing that ever happened to you. I said, he goes, did you get paid anything? I said, nothing. They gave me $15,000 for my hard drive because they wanted to show all the marijuana footage I had. I thought it was going to be a documentary about being one of the biggest marijuana dealers in Canada in history. I was in Rolling Stones magazine for genetics on Persian cats because I sold more Persian cats than anybody in North America that I've ever heard of.
Amazing.
Fed my family off of it, and my cats were hyperallergenic because nobody ever complained that Teddy Hart brought a cat to a show and anyone ever got sick. And you know how many people are allergic to cats?
Oh yeah,
a ton. So and that was another thing. Anything people could ever get on me, they would. So no one ever got that I got anybody sick because my cats were legit hyperallergenic. Well, those genetics are worth thousands of dollars per kitten. I sold fucking 80 kittens in 1 year at about $1,000 a pop. So that was an $80,000 a year business for me, which I lost my business with my cats, which broke my heart. I ended up getting stuck in the States for a year, then went back to trial willingly. If you watch the Peacock shit, I went back willingly, knowing I was facing 20 years in jail because I wanted to stand in front of a judge and jury, and I wanted that fucking sentence to be not guilty. And I wanted to get acquitted of that shit because anyone that fucking rapes a girl is a punk ass bitch, and they deserve to get their teeth kicked in. And when you go to jail as a sexual predator, and it's actually real, you're getting your teeth kicked in, or you're gonna get shanked. It's not something that's cool. Or you're gonna be in PC, protective custody, or in the SAG the whole time. And I sat in jail and I did my time, and I have all my teeth in my mouth, and I never got in any serious fights because I was a gangster and smart, and I'm a Jesus Christ guy and a heart. But being a heart's a blessing, and it was also probably the worst thing you could have for 10 years. Being a heart wasn't a good thing because of the way the politics of wrestling are. So if next year I'm in good shape, I have to deal with a few things in the States still. Donald Trump's president. I think it would be something where I could talk to. I think really people think it's crazy, but there's enough connections with the family and with WWE and with wrestling being the way it is that I have a failure to appear in court in the States in Texas, which is I just decided not to go over failure to ID. So they tried to give me 11 days in jail or 14 days in jail for failure to ID. I have 3 different names on on the police record.
Yeah.
Edward Annis, Edward Ellsworth Annis, Edward Annis with an E at the end, Teddy Hart, another spell. So, and I have my name and my birth date wrong in the Philadelphia database. When I tried to get my license back, they couldn't give me my Florida driver's license back because they had the wrong name in Pennsylvania. I've been in 7 states in the last 8 years. I've lived in all these, so I had different eyes. So it was such a headache to get my license. And when I gave the police my information for time served, I had to do an MDMA charge. Never done coke in my life. Never done meth. Never fucking smoked crack. Never taken a painkiller until this is the first time I ever took a painkiller in my career was when I hurt my back this last time. So yeah, I like certain drugs. I love mushrooms, and I've done acid, and I've done fucking a ton of weed, but I've never done any other of those stupid drugs. And I've done GHB, and I've been vocal about that type of stuff. And it's like, and that sounds like a lot of stuff. It's like that's fine, but again, know your drugs.
Oh, that is not
stuff, you know?
hardly anything at all. And the stuff that you're doing is not that ordinary. It's stuff that you hear Joe Rogan talking about it. You hear Mike Tyson talking about it.
I did MDMA, and I had the best time of my life in the gym. I went to the gym and did yoga on MDMA, and I know it's people don't want to hear it about, and it's like, well, kids are watching. It's like, well, then I guess explain to your kids that you guys would much rather have me doing MDMA than smoking crack or doing fentanyl or doing crystal meth or fucking shooting heroin. And if I'm going to be honest, I'm honest, and I think there's way more people out there that like the fact that people are honest. I just never got a chance to come back and show people that this is my first chance back in Canada in 8 years. I'd like to see how I can promote Calgary and Edmonton, get the numbers of wrestling fans back up. The fact we had 16,000 people at the Saddle Dome watching Bret Hart was a big deal, and that was just the last show they did. And Edmonton had 19,000 people, and that was another big deal for Canada to be back on the map and Alberta to be running again. And AEW did a few shows here, and I know Jericho's got some plans of doing certain things with running his own promotion. Potentially, Scott D'Amore's also got plans of doing something. I know he bought the Maple Leaf Wrestling name, so I just think for me to be in the States wasting my time wondering if I was going to get a call from people that I'd never asked to call me, considering they're good friends of mine. And I talk to the Young Bucks quite a bit, and they've always been advocates of my ideas about the trampoline ring or about adding certain types of padded floors and like maybe different things with the turnbuckles being on remote control, the top one. So the top turnbuckle could actually be raised like one of those cranes kind of where you like a TV antenna where you just press the button and you could raise it up another 2 or 3 feet. So guys like Ricochet, who I've been a huge fan of for my whole life, Neville and Will Ospreay, and I just think that AEW, it's a slow burn, and people don't realize Tony Khan's not going to ever run out of money, and they're just going to get bigger and bigger and better and better, and that these guys are all younger guys that are just about to hit their glory days, and that if people just keep watching the product and understand that we're so lucky to have wrestling on 4 or 5 days a week, and that it's a blessing, and it's a blessing for all the guys, and that's more of me. I'm a guy that if wrestling's doing well, I'm surviving because the Hart name's synonymous with wrestling, and the better the guys do, the happier I am because I have videos with all those guys, and all those guys had good experiences with me and great matches, and they would never had injuries or anything. And I think I've probably taught a lot of those guys about having a big set of balls and that less is not more, and doing more is more, and doing it right and doing it smart and doing it clean, and the excellence of execution. They called me the evolution of execution. And that was something I was proud of when Rey Mysterio told me he thought I was the most innovative wrestler in the world. And that was a huge compliment that I got from a few different guys. That they said, you invented more moves than anybody. And you were one of the first guys to ever do all these different moves and to kind of incorporate technical wrestling with high flying and innovation, and then have a character that I've never come out of gimmick. Teddy Hart is always in gimmick because there's no gimmick. I'm a guy that sold marijuana on the street with airplanes and made millions of dollars on the street and had a mansion without ever making money doing wrestling. And I was still flown out to New York for Jersey All Pro for 10 years when nobody could get a booking out of Canada. And I helped pave the way for guys like Kenny Omega and El Generico or Sami Zayn and Kevin Owens and a lot of these guys that are from Canada, and following in Jericho's footsteps and Edge's footsteps and Christian's footsteps, and tried to get in the ring. And whenever I put my name on the line as being a Hart, I tried to have a 5-star match and send the people away with a good taste in their mouth about the show, about wrestling itself, and about my family's legacy. And to have that taken away from me was frustrating, but I'm not a quitter, and I continue to believe there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that God has a plan for me, and that I'm in the right situation now because I'm back home. And it's humbling, and it's freezing cold because I've been living in Florida and Dallas and different places. So it's -10 out tonight. It's not so bad. It was -20 last week. And I remember thinking, fuck, I don't know why I'm back here. This is so crazy, the cold. But again, then I got to see Mo Jabari and Dynamite Kid Jr. fill the pavilion up, and they had such a good match. Wow. I remember thinking maybe this is, and it was, 5-star. I'll have to send it to you. But it was just so cool to see. It looks just like Dynamite. I don't know if you've seen Tom Billington Jr.
Yes, I seen him. I seen him wrestle. Cool, he looks exactly like Dynamite.
Mo Jabari wrestles just like Brett, but a little faster pace instead of being a pussy, because some of these guys are pussies right now, and they can't get in the ring with me. They make sure to tell the promoter, hey, I can't have a match with Ted. They won't say it to my face, and then the promoter is like, I can use you, but only a few guys want to work because they're scared. And I remember I was thinking, what are they scared of? And he's like, well, some guys are afraid of negative publicity. Some guys are afraid you're going to hurt them because you do so much. And I'm like, have I ever hurt anybody? And
I think they're afraid you're going to outwork them.
And they're afraid of having to job out because in Calgary, I'm still king. And so it's one of those things where the politics coming back to my own city after all these years is funny. There's a few guys that I'm working with now that, they couldn't do anything for the first couple months, but now that I've been here and according to, I'm on good behavior, which is just more bullshit, but I've always been the same person. So, but I guess because there's been no incidences and nobody's really complaining, everybody seems to be happy. I'm not a threat to anybody anymore. And I guess, so things are starting to evolve again and things are getting better. I'm getting more matches, and I'm getting better quality opponents, and I'm having better matches with some of the rookies that are happy to work me, and they're excited about getting in the ring. And there's a kid named Othias, and he's one of the kids I'm working next week. Really nice kid. He works with a youth group. He's got 40 kids that are all basically troubled youth that he works with, and he's like their motivational speaker and chaperone and mentor. And his dream match was to get to wrestle me. So we've had now 3 matches. We're going on for number 4. But when I got back, I hadn't had a match in 3 years. And they put me out main event in front of 500 kids in Erskine, Alberta, which is some little town. But I guess the curling rink decided to give us the building. And they had all the kids from the elementary school there and junior high, and it was the loudest crowd I've been in front of in years, and it was all kids, so we stole the show.
That's awesome.
And I hadn't had a match, so I'm like, if I can do the backflip, I'll try it off the top. So I'm like, okay, to the floor. I'm like, I don't know, man. And I said, you know what, do or die, might as well. If I don't have the balls to do it, I might as well just quit wrestling now. Then I was rusty, but I hit everything, and man, we ended up doing like a 20-minute hardcore match outside the ring and going through tables and like metal chairs, and it was nice for me to know I still had it in me, and I was happy with when I looked in the mirror. I was proud of myself that I was still able to do a lot of the stuff I was scared of doing, and being scared is a terrible thing, and you have to get over that fear, or don't bother getting involved with life, because life just gets scarier and scarier and scarier over the years if you don't have the right mental preparation and understanding. Until we've cured dying, we're all getting older, and the older you get, the harder things get, and life's a struggle and a battle. And I tell everybody out there, keep the faith, respect your reflection, and respect the people that keep you alive and take care of you, and those that provide you love and attention and affection, because this is a nasty, cold, freezing, dark world sometimes if you don't have the right people around you, or if you get in the wrong mindset. So it's a lot of mental preparation and praying to God every day that things get better for me, and that maybe there's some miracle that I can pull a rabbit out of my hat for the next 10 years of my career, maybe with training some guys and regaining credibility and regaining Brett's trust, and maybe some of the other people that are in wrestling now start to see that, and word spreads, and then you never know what could happen.
Well, Teddy, you have been just amazing tonight. I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you. This hour has flown by, my friend.
I hope I didn't ramble on too much.
No. I love you're a storyteller, baby. One of the things that I'm real proud of with this radio show is that I never get in anybody's way. I just let people talk and tell their story, and you have told. Good God, if I was taking notes, I would have ran out of places in the notebook. Well, you've covered everything tonight, baby. But I definitely want to do this again.
Yeah, I would love to do it again with you. And hopefully Rene Dupree's feeling better. I know he had a problem with the podcast we did with, he said potentially drinking and taking some pills, and that it was a bad mix, and that he apologized to everybody that was out there watching. I don't know what exactly the details were. I just know that I was kind of unhappy that a few times I was talking and I was interrupted on stories that I thought were pretty important. And I was being very concise with him, making sure that there was everything from one A, B, C. With you, I was like A, Z, F, G.
Oh, I loved it. I loved it because you got everything. Guy.
Once I knew you watched me in Mexico, then you knew who I was, and you know what I've been through. I thought from that point I could talk to you like a older fan and friend of mine, and I could go over things, and I could bring things back and forth, and you were educated enough and smart enough. Don told me you're an extremely intelligent guy, and that you're a very loyal, you're a very smart wrestling guy, but you're also very smart from the street type of understanding, where you're not there to do anything but try to put a nice little shine on us, and you appreciate us coming on here just like I appreciate you being such a nice host and putting up with the headache of the phone not working.
Hey, I'll tell you, technology, I always like to tell everybody, technology's great when it works.
Yes. It's like fucking, like I said, herding cats. It's almost impossible. I don't know what to do. So.
By the way, but one thing I've got to ask you before we go. How in the world did you teach the cats to do a moonsault?
Oh, man. Cats land on their feet, so I actually learned how to do the backflip a lot more gracefully from watching my cats. So when I was doing the NBC Peacock thing, before it was NBC Peacock, it was Open Sky Pictures, and they came in my house, and I have a balcony at my house, and I had like 35 cats at the time. And so when you get them as babies, and you throw them onto the bed, they land on their feet automatically. So once they realize that they get a treat, they would line up to get backflip because they love getting thrown in the air, and they're landing on a soft bed. So the guy said, "Look, do those cats like it? Are you hurting them?" And I said, "Well, I said, you sound like a shit disturber. I said, are you looking for a reason to get me shut down? I said, because I throw the cat 20 feet in the air and I catch him every time. He loves it. I said for the cats, it's like athletics. When could a cat do a backflip otherwise? And once it's aware it's doing a backflip, the cats are landing on a nice soft mattress and then getting a piece of steak after for doing it. They're pretty happy with that. You watch what tigers do for the gut for Siegfried and Roy and these different, there's a couple. Think about some of the stuff dogs do, or they're a lot smarter than as long as you reward them and they're not being hurt. If the cat doesn't want to come back, try catching a cat that doesn't want to do a backflip. He's going to scratch the shit out of you and bite you.
Yes.
So, and then if they're sitting on the turnbuckle, obviously they trust me, and I'm taking them on the road with me. And no one ever had a story of my cats doing anything but being well behaved, never pissing or shitting anywhere ever, and always being basically the highlight of a lot of people's night because they got to see the Teddy Hart cat and they got to hold it and take.
Oh, I love looking at videos and photos of you and the cats. I'm a huge cat guy. We've got like 7 of them here at the house. I have 3, and the girlfriend has like 6. So we got plenty of cats, baby.
Oh, I'm so happy to hear that. So obviously we don't know each other that well, but I hope this becomes a friendship, and maybe we could get you up here to do some commentary.
Oh God, I would love to go to Canada, or as my good friend Ross Long refers to it, Canada. So yes.
Well, if you could have me on again, I would love to.
Oh yeah, I would love to do it. I'll get with Dawn and we'll get it figured out, my friend.
I was so scared. I was going to be like, I'm flustered. I just got off work. I had a long week. I'm trying to get situated, and then I'm like, this thing's not working. I tried getting a laptop to work. I don't know how to work I just got a laptop. Someone gave me a brand new laptop, and I don't have the password. I had to call him, so he's trying to send me a message on the phone. I answered the phone, and then our video got cut off, and I couldn't get back onto the thing. And I'm like, God damn it! I'm just going to cancel the podcast. And then finally, the phone worked, and the lady that was here was nice enough to go. And she doesn't know me that well either, but she's a very kind-hearted lady who went out of her way to make sure I had a bedroom and a place to stay because it's hard for me to get a hotel sometimes in Calgary because the hotels are booked so far in advance. Also, I don't have my credit cards and stuff under my name yet because when I came back to Canada, right before I came back, I was in a really bad car accident and I lost my U.S. passport and I lost my bank cards. And because I didn't have a second piece of ID, I was never able to get my bank accounts to be reopened. So I've left like $20,000 in 2 bank accounts, and it's just frozen. I have no way of getting it out because no other. And if you don't have activity on your checking account, your savings account's automatically then held in, I guess, in under investigation because it's suspicious behavior because I was trying to log in and I couldn't get in. And then when I tried to go online to do it, they need certain things to get online identity verified. And if you can't verify it, so I lost all my Bitcoin and I lost 2 of my bank accounts ended up losing my car because I couldn't even get my car out of the impound because I didn't have a second piece of ID to get my car out of the impound that was paid for cash, my Maserati. So I ended up losing that too. So I came back to Canada with no car and with limited amount of money, and thank God a few friends of mine had said, hey, here's some money to get back on your feet. We know you're usually extremely successful and smart and you always come up with something, but marijuana is legal in Canada now, guys. I don't have a job. So they have dispensaries everywhere. So I used to be like the walking dispensary with all the best weed in the world and shatter and oil, and man, there's a dispensary on every corner here like the liquor store. Canada's completely legal. So I have no job except for wrestling, and there's not a lot of shows that want to book me right now. So I'm like, damn, I better get a 9-to-5 job. And I was lucky to get a job setting up gym equipment for my friend who's trying to come up with a gym equipment line for wrestlers and new equipment and kind of reinvent all of the gym equipment and make it way more state of the art and a little bit more technology and like flexible and 3 or 4 different machines at once, or like different exercises that you can do leg press at the same time as bench press, and like so you can be working 2 different body parts at the same time, and like they're really breaking down what's the body capable of, and if there's a new way of working out, and if there's a new way of eating and dieting and different food options and different elixirs and different drinks, and like studying a lot about the body and what heals the body and what's good for you, and what's all the chemicals that are out there, what's the long-term effects of a lot of these things. And like I've been studying a lot about healing and about natural holistic medicine and different drinks and fresh juices and like that. There's cures for almost everything out there that are completely natural. It's just a matter of
Yes.
finding the right botanist and the people that do this type of medicine. There's a guy named Callie, I think his name is. I'm going to come back if we can do this.
Oh yeah,
again, I'll come back and talk
we're
about
gonna do this again. Yeah, we're definitely gonna do
on the
this
health and
again.
wellness side of it, because that's the other thing I'm working on is basically just how to prolong the human life and to be as efficient as possible for as many years as possible, because I've lost some of the best years of my life sitting in jail and being on probation and having an ankle monitor and restrictions that some of the stuff was my own fault, and sloppiness from driving with drugs in my car and not being more aware and driving really flashy cars and not realizing that I had certain things in my pocket and
Yeah.
being a typical stoner and not paying attention to some things, and it cost me. And those are things I take on the chin myself. And like I say, I did my time, and I would like to get my life back on track, but it's not as easy as you think, and it's a work in progress. And I'm happy that I'm alive and healthy, and that I have a roof over my head and a hot shower and a bed and a pillow, because these are all things you take for granted in life until you lose them, and then all of a sudden you're
Yeah.
sitting there homeless with 50 grand in your bank account, and I can't access my money. And my dad's not sending me any money. I can't get a hold of him. I don't have a phone. I couldn't get my phone back on me. Like, you'd be surprised when the smallest things, all of a sudden you're not online, and I can't
Yes.
get my bank account, and I can't get my phone on, and all of a sudden I'm stuck in another country. I haven't been home in 8 years. I can't even get an airplane ticket to get back. Thank God someone had my Canadian passport at a gas station. I had left it there, and the guy called me like 4 months later. He's like, "Hey, I have your Canadian passport. You left it here after the car accident." And I'm like, damn, that's the only piece of ID I had. So when I tried to get back on a plane, thank God I had my Canadian passport. Otherwise, I wouldn't even been able to get back to my own country.
Wow.
That's how crazy it gets. So I am working on a comeback. It's a bunch of different levels. Like I say, I'm working on doing some more training with animals. I really want to do a red panda. I think they're extremely intelligent, and I'm trying to work
Wow.
with an otter. So I have a couple of friends that have otters, and the otters are really smart. So I would like to bring an otter to the ring and do something with the otter to put some emphasis on endangered species that are extremely smart, and give them a place to do stuff with. But I'd like the cat and the red panda to interact, and that's something I'm working on. We have some red pandas at the Calgary Zoo, and one of my friends was getting the red panda to do pull-ups. So if you have something to look
That's
at on
awesome.
computer, go into the YouTube and type in red panda doing pull-ups, and study about that animal, because I think that animal is going to be something that you'd be absolutely fascinated about. And I'm a huge, huge animal guy, dogs, cats, but I really want to do something with a dog in the ring again, because Davey Boy Smith, obviously one of my favorite uncles and one of the nicest human beings ever on the planet, just a sweetheart of a man. And Harry Smith, uh, I'm a little mad at Harry for not having my back in MLW more, but I did some stuff, and with him living such a clean lifestyle, I think even me smoking pot or hanging out with escorts and strippers might have been a little heavy for what he's used to. And he works so hard on keeping a clean image that I can understand his apprehensiveness of maybe putting his neck on the line for me at times. But I just want to say congratulations to him. But I know he wanted me to start doing some training with the dogs again, because I know he was so proud to bring the dog to the ring in MLW. I don't know if you remember, but he brought the
Oh
bulldog
yeah.
to the ring in MLW, and I wanted to recreate that. And hopefully, if Canada has its own wrestling company soon, then I don't have to worry about going to the States or dealing with that shit. I can just kind of keep Canada uh, as a specialty thing. And because my creativity and my ideas and the ability to do other things like bring an animal on TV here with the right permits, or being able to work on the native reservations, there's a lot less rules about what I could do. And like I say, I would really want to bring some. I really want to bring a couple of cool different animals on TV again, without PETA or any animal rights groups trying to talk any shit. All I'm trying to do is have some fun with the animal. My cats were always safe, and it made so many people happy. It literally changed so many people's lives, of the fact they went to the show and they got to see the cat too and take a picture with the cat, or I'd walk around the ring and everyone got to pet the cat. And for some reason, that made people happier than me doing a 20-foot backflip for having a 5-star match a lot of the times. Just saying, and that was like
Hey, the cats were over, Teddy.
he got a bigger pop in GCW, the cat, than Mr. Velvet got a bigger pop than I did. He was sitting on the turnbuckle, and he never moved. he never blew his spot. So
He never blew his spot. That's entertaining.
He actually did a pin one time on Orange Cassidy. He had a match, and he did the 1, 2, 3 on Orange Cassidy. He beat 2 guys, I think, and the cat helped get the pin.
That is awesome.
I appreciate your willingness to listen to all my funny stories and craziness, and to keep to follow me through it, because
Oh yeah.
Stuff, so.
I like to think that after this evening I speak Teddy Hart. So.
Well, you do. And like I say, I'm a pretty. I say I talk. I think I can get the most words in per minute per podcast in the history of podcasts.
Oh, I'll tell you, there was a couple stories there. You were just firing off, and I'm like, I don't have a way to jump in here, so I'm just going to let him talk.
I appreciate it. And again, I only have so much time in my life, and I don't know when I'm ever going to be on again, because every day is a precious day. You never know when it's your last day here. And I had a lot of friends and accidents, and I've seen things where, you count your blessings and hope that you got 50 years, 100 years left on the planet, but you never know. So I had that, I guess, mindset sometimes where if this is the last Teddy Hart interview, knock on wood, then I got to say as much as I possibly could in a 1.5 hour period of time. And hopefully these are stories that keep people smiling over the years and motivate people that are in a dark spot, that no matter how dark it gets, if you keep faith in God and you surround yourself with good people and you don't give up, things will get better. And there's light at the end of every single tunnel out there. And that life's a journey and a struggle, but life's also extremely beautiful and a blessing. And we're happy to be alive and living in Canada, a wonderful country where I can smoke weed and go to this. Now, it was one of the things I fought for as an undercover, working for the RCMP and doing all the marijuana activist stuff over the years, and battling a lot of different drug cartels over the idea that marijuana will be the #1 drug in the world, and you'll make more money off that drug and keep the world safe, because we all live on this planet. And if you kill all the world off by fentanyl and meth and coke and crack and heroin, then fuck, dude, we've killed all of our kids. And the whole world's fucked, and everything we ever worked for with technology so we could live forever and have a beautiful planet. We could heal this planet with technology. Won't even be worth the shit, because all the people are going to be on fucking drugs that never made anybody smile.
Yeah.
So.
Well, Teddy, you have been amazing. I cannot wait to do this again.
Much, too. I can just tell how good of a guy you are. I can see your smile, and I can see the energy from you. I'm an empath, and I really appreciate you being such a nice guy and giving me a chance to talk.
Well, you are amazing, and I definitely look forward to doing this again. Have yourself a wonderful evening, Teddy, and I will talk to you soon.
God bless you. Maybe I'll call you later on with Dawn. The three of us can just have a little chat and just let me know.
Hey, that's fine. Yeah, feel free to give me a holler, sir.
Dawn, I love you very much. Tylee, Texas, thanks for introducing me to Dawn. Dawn's been like an angel in my corner, one of my closest friends, and really helped me out. I'm hoping to get Dawn up here to come. We have a big mansion up here. My friend Richard Lionheart, he does medieval fighting, and he's trying to get
wow.
medieval stuff. We're creating our own medieval fighting league, which is pretty cool. But it's like full sword fighting and axe fighting with full armor.
Holy smokes!
That also as a competition sport, and doing some stuff with their kids wrestling school with that potentially. So, but Dawn and Richard are good friends now. They're working together, and Dawn's been invited to come stay at Richard's new mansion. So I'm hoping to get Dawn up here for
that's awesome.
Some skiing, and maybe, I don't know if we'll be skiing, but we'll be definitely riding a snowmobile and having some fun on the mountain.
Well, Teddy, have yourself a wonderful evening. I'll talk to you soon, sir.
God bless you.
Appreciate it, brother. Thank you, man. There he goes. That is Teddy Hart, the legendary Teddy Hart. Holy smokes. What a storyteller, kids. Thanks for joining us this evening here on Facebook. And, of course, for the folks that are